Hello, you sewing niestas. So you're making yourself these beautiful outfits for all the different occasions that you go to. But don't neglect your husband or your partner. How about making them a tie that suits your attire? And when you walk into this occasion, into the event, people will immediately notice that you have an eye for detail, that the two of you are an absolute matching couple in the sense of your color tone, not from head to toe, just the color tone of the tie and your outfit. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a tie so that in future you can make sure that you and your partner look absolutely amazing together and he doesn't feel left out. Alright, so the first thing you need to do is to look at the grain line on your tie pattern. This tie pattern is Simplicity 4762. I've used it for a very long time. So here is the selvage edge at the end of the table. The fabric is folded on the single, it's not double. The selvage edge is on the edge closest to me. I'm laying the pattern. As you can see, the tie is going across diagonally. It's going across the actual bias of the fabric. Because when you put the tie on, it gets tied around the neck, and then of course the tie knot gets made, so it needs to be able to stretch around the neckline. Right, so now the first thing you would need to do is take your grain. So look where the grain line is and measure the grain line of the pattern onto the edge of your selvage. So in this case mine is 30. I make sure that the opposite end of the grain line is also 30 centimeters. I'll make sure both is 30. You wiggle your pattern until you've got an absolute accurate grain line measurement. I've got now 30.5 and I have got 30.5. You can put some weights down. Then you'll do the exactly same to the second piece. I normally put them quite close together. So it's easier to cut. So now my tie grain line is perfect. You can go ahead and put your pins in and then cut out the tie, and make sure that you mark all the little circles onto your fabric. You actually cut into all the little notches on the pattern. The pattern even shows you how the corner of the pattern folds back. So you go ahead and you pin it and you can cut it out. So make sure that you cut out all these little notches where the pattern actually folds. So when you are putting it together, you have got these marking lines of putting the tie together. Okay. The next step would be is to cut out interfacing, iron-on interfacing. Now I would suggest you use a fabric iron-on interfacing, something that is, you know, almost the same sort of thickness as your tie material. In this case, the Duchess satin, it's fairly thick and hard. So this is like a medium weight fabric violin, just to give the tie a little bit of structure, because here is a tie already made up in the fabric. So there is the tie, as well as a little handkerchief to go into the top pocket. So it's very snazzy. Your partner's going to look absolutely amazing next to you with your beautiful outfit that you have made for yourself. Right, you go to the violin, and then First of all, you need to cut the tie facing down on the fabric, because this needs to be cut right side up. The front part of the tie as well as the under part of the tie as well. The violin will be at the bottom of your fabric. This is the right side of your fabric. It'll be basically ironed on underneath the fabric facing up. For this particular violin that I've cut out a solid piece following the pattern identical as the top, because this material is like a slipper satin. It's a very soft satin, so I needed to make it a bit more crisp and firm, so I made the violin a full piece of the copying the pattern identical. Usually what you would do is you would just cut where the pattern shows you where the fold line is. That is how wide you actually cut your violin, not the solid piece like I have done now, but this is because I'm making another tie in a softer fabric. For the fabric in the Duchess satin, which is a much thicker and harder fabric, I just cut this section out of violin. And at the under part of the tie, I only cut the inside piece of the tie. So when you sort of close this all together and you stitch it closed, you've only got the center part of the tie being fused. Like that. Just this section has been fused on the inside, and then it folds over and gets stitched down. Alright, so go ahead and cut out your fabric as well as your violin, and make sure that you're cutting right side up on the fabric. And then of course the violin needs to be under part of the pattern exactly placed just down like that, because that's going to be pressed at the bottom of your fabric. And to actually press your tie exactly on the fold lines of the pattern. That is the right side of the fabric facing against the ironing board. The interfacing, which is the sticky side, onto the wrong side of the tie. What I've done is I've taken the tie's markings, these are the folding lines, and I transferred them onto the interfacing. So I just marked them and then I traced them with the ruler. So this is my guideline. So once I've pressed the interfacing down, I'm going to fold it over on this fold line as my guide. For the bottom of the tie, the pattern suggests just to cut a narrow strip of interfacing on the inside of the tie, so when it folds over, just the bottom base of the tie is nice and structured. But because I'm using a very soft, lightweight satin, like I mentioned, I'm going to do a full interfacing on the front of the tie. Normally you would only do a small section, like I did with the grey tie. So the grey tie has only got the center section. That center section, like the back, the bottom of the tie. Alright, so just iron along the fold lines on your drawing lines that you've done. So just give it a good press. Don't use steam because you've got the interfacing on your tie. The interfacing will add too much moisture to the glue and it will actually come off. It will unseal. Okay, so just basically press along that line, and I used a pencil. I didn't use an erasable Koki, otherwise the heat would make it disappear. Alright, so just go ahead and fold all the way along your folding lines and give it a press. This is just your guideline. I would be very careful because the satin can quickly burn, so I didn't keep the heat too high. Just giving it a press. And then with the bottom, because this satin is just very, very light and soft, it actually wants to curl when I press it. So what I did was I just gently gave it a press around the edges of the satin where the interfacing borderline is as my guideline. This is the handkerchief. It is 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. It's just an absolute square. So what I do is I normally just do a roll hem. So I'll do about a half a centimeter to a half a centimeter fold back approximately, and then stitch right against the edge of the inside fold line. You can pre-press the roll hem, but this fabric is very, very thin and light and it curls all the time, so it's a bit difficult to pre-press it. Appreciate if you perhaps consider to like, share and subscribe my channel to help me grow. I've done a little handkerchief, just a roll hem right around. Just going to give it a press. Let's get onto the tie. So the first thing you've got to do is join the two bottom edges of the tie. Alright, so I'm just going to pin it first before I sew it, so I can just see that it's aligned. Now turn it around. That looks pretty close. Okay, I'm going to stitch it about 1 centimeter seam allowance. I'm going to stitch the bottom fold of the pointed little arrow. I'm going to pin the two edges together all the way to the top, and then I'm going to stitch it down a 1 centimeter seam. Going to trim the seam away so it's less bulk in the tie. Alright, so eventually I got it through. And stitch it that it stays in. Exactly same at the bottom as well. You can just give it a little stitch and catch it, and then go ahead and give it a press.